Hello, hello, hello. I'm Sam Bompas, and you're here for Tongues in Turmoil. So this evening, we're ending with your radical palate and the new frontiers of culinary creativity. In the next 40 minutes, what we're going to do is examine the wonders of your mouth, the mysteries of the tongue, and the flavor apparatus that every single one of you has. We're going to gaze into the future, looking at global food trends, but then determine how you can make your own to determine how we eat in years to come. And also, there are going to be lots of some practical demonstrations, which will see you tasting a world first. And then also there's an element of danger as well. So I was pleased to see some of the people that were sitting right in the front row move further back as well if they saw what I was making, which maybe augurs well, maybe not. But I think this gives you, just play a quick video to start off with. Okay, so at Bompas and Parr, we kind of spend a lot of our time working with a lot of the world's top museums and cultural centers and all these sort of fabulous brands. But really what I spend our time doing is trying to give people an amazing time with food and drink that delights them. And it's all about generosity. So I vowed I'd never, ever do a talk without bringing something for people to taste. So there's a moment of nervousness about just how much alcohol I could bring on the Eurostar, but I think I've got enough for everyone. So what I was going to do is I was going to bounce around, and if you could work together by passing these spoons around the audience, and take one, keep it for later, don't put it under your seat, because you will want it in a second. But so the sorts of things we do in terms of trying to delight people are making breathable clouds of gin and tonic. That this is a room that you walk inside, and there's so much alcohol in the air between us that if there's the distance between me and yourself, sir, then we wouldn't be able to see each other because there's so much booze between us, and it intoxicates through your lungs and eyeballs. You spent the summer making non-melting ice lollies. And DNA dining, so creating meals where every single course is predicated on your personal DNA, so you have the ultimate food experience. If you were to come to our meeting room, we literally have this organ in our meeting room, 6 meters high, and that changes your perception of taste using cross-modal sensory science. But you also like doing stuff that's for the hell of it, just to experiment, to see what's possible. And so this was, and I've always wanted to cook with lava. I found a guy in Syracuse University who melts down 1.1 billion-year-old rock to 1,350 degrees Celsius. And he uses it, he's a volcanologist, so he uses it to test all the material properties of lava. It's the only place in the world you can actually test lava under lab conditions. But after all his research, he'd never cooked with it. And that's when we phoned him up.
Cooking the ultimate steak, forget about barbecue. A British chef has discovered that red-hot molten lava is really the only way to go. Using an artificial volcano, Sam Bompas figured out that when you cook steak over lava, there's no smoke, and since lava is pure heat, the meat seals very quickly with an even char. And as I've said in my many years of cooking, the best way to deal with meat is to add a level of unnecessary danger. Back to you guys.
Wait, where does one get lava from?
So, but with all of that, it seems quite a disparate body of work that you're doing at any one time, and weirdly, it all came from jelly. So over a decade ago, so I'll give you the rundown on this, because it really contextualizes everything else we're going to say. Over a decade ago, myself and my business partner, Harry, who've been old school friends, we've known each other since we're 13, wanted to get a stall at Borough Market, which is London's foremost food market. And we had a look around, and they had really good roasts and things like that, but they didn't have any very good sweet dishes. And we thought, let's make jelly. There wasn't much thinking going into it at all. It was pretty reflexive. We thought it would just be a fun summer job. And at the time, we wanted to get these sort of beautiful antique copper molds, but we couldn't afford any of them. And this is when Harry, who's training to be an architect, realized he could use his architectural training that he'd using to design buildings like this to design jelly molds. And so he'd CAD them all up, they'd be in Rhino or something like that, then would 3D print them, and that would give you a wonderful jelly mold like this. We're like, this is phenomenal. Because what we really wanted to do was push our own personal craft as far as we possibly could. We decided to throw down to any architects, any designers around the world, said if you give us a jelly design, you can submit it in any format. It can be CAD, it can be a napkin sketch, whatever you want, we'll make it into a jelly, because we thought this would really push our craft. And it turned out, this is back in 2008, a really long time ago, I think because of the global recession that was happening, a lot of architects, a lot of designers had a lot of time on their hands to design jelly. And we ended up, it was astonishing, it was really amazing. I've got people like Lord Foster, the architect, designing his Millennium Bridge, Roger Sturck Harbour and Partners doing Bracas Airport in Madrid out of jelly. And every single one of the modules, if you go to the airport, it's got an interior location device where all the different supports are painted different colors. And they mapped all of those support colors onto different flavors, which was amazing. It's really cool. And we thought, because we've got all these different beautiful jelly designs, let's host a jelly party, a jelly exhibition. And at the time, we didn't know much about doing events. Weirdly, Harry, who was still in his final year at UCL, worked out that he could book rooms on the room booking system. And one of those rooms was an entire university quad. Don't think they knew what they were letting themselves in for. But anyway, booked the whole university quad out, put tickets on sale, and inadvertently sold 2,000 tickets. Now, we'd never done an event at the time. And what was more, we were telling everyone that we were doing architectural jellies. And the thing with architectural jellies is everyone thought that they were going to be vast in scale. They thought they were going to be huge buildings of jellies, that they're going to be able to eat their way through. And we knew that the jellies we're making were no bigger than this. They're pretty small. And the reason for that is if you make them much bigger, then you have to put so much gelatin in that they're like a bouncy ball. They're horrible to eat. You don't want to eat them at all. So at this point, we're really worried that we're going to have 2,000 angry people who are expecting these vast jellies, and they were getting these small things. So this is when we started really coming into multi-sensory design. So we tried everything we knew how to do. So we set the jellies up really high, so they'd be as close to people's eyes when they saw them as possible. The other good thing about jellies is they catch the light really well, so we almost use them as an optic. And then we attached, it was the crudest device possible from everything I've seen here. It was a truck windscreen wiper motor, and then with a lead weight attached to a 5 kilo weight, and that was our waggle engine. And this waggled back and forth, so you got a lot of movement in there, so they perhaps had a little bit more impact. The other thing is we colored the whole thing up red, we sprayed it all so it smelled beautifully, and we'll see a little bit later how the senses all start interrelating. And then we recorded, as the first time that we collaborated with scientists, so bring scientists together to record the sound of jelly wobbling. It was with an inner ear scientist at UCL, and he said, well, there's quite a lot of collagen in the ear. That's a bit like gelatin. Let's go into an anechoic chamber and record the sound of jelly wobbling. New Scientist carried this as a film, as one of their first films, and it was, for much of their career, the most watched film they'd ever done. The resolution is terrible, but I think it's the sound that carries it. So yeah, that's our first bit of serious scientific collaboration, but it had a good media payoff for them. We also had these spoon dancers and then jelly wrestling as well. So this is, you can just about make out Heston Blumenthal in the back. He at the time was, I think, the world's best chef, certainly Britain's best chef, had all the Michelin stars. It was totally upstaged by, I don't know who these people are, and they dived into jelly wrestling. And this is really the first big event we did, and we learned some really important things. Basically, if you've got jelly at 11 o'clock, all the jellies get thrown. So it starts off as quite a serious jelly exhibition, and suddenly turned into this all-out food fight, London's biggest food fight. And then the other thing is that we really learned is if you're doing big events for 2,000 people, make sure you plan for the cleaning up. We were so worried about getting this event all up and running that we really didn't plan at all. This was spread all over, vast, probably about 10,000 square foot. So cleaning that up out of the grass was challenging. But we then went, just having focused on just one thing, jelly, on this jelly adventure around the world, and it kind of really took us everywhere. So we ended up doing things like jellies for weddings. We did jellies for people's funerals. Actually, we paused this. This is for Michael Jackson's funeral as a tribute to him, and it's served by waiters with one white glove. But then we sort of superseded it, and we're traveling to Australia, and they said, look, we'd really like you to come do a talk on funereal food. We know you're interested in it, and that's because funereal food in the UK used to be in the shape of things like jellies. It used to be molded. We can't pay you, but we can give you the use of our hearse for the entire time you're in Australia. So it's great. Got to drive around in a Rolls-Royce Phantom with lots of doily bits, right? There's, which is quite weird. Always embracing the surreal. And then jellies on a vast scale as well. So this is a jelly map of America. Jellies for fashion shows. This is one of our biggest jelly disasters of all time. We're trying to experiment with new experimental gums like Gellan and Agar Agar, and combined all of them into one jelly soup. And normally when you're unmolding jellies, you hold it in some hot water, and we use a food-safe plastic mold. And as you submerge it in the hot water, that just melts a tiny layer around the outside, and it just flips out. It comes out really easily. With this, we had it in hot water. It wasn't coming out. We put on 3 pairs of rubber gloves. We're holding it in boiling water, and it wasn't coming out, and the molds were actually melting. And at this point, someone had spent 6 months putting together their entire fashion collection for their 15-minute runway show, the main bit of which was the jelly display. We were really nervous. It was London Fashion Week. We pulled all the seamstresses from Fashion Week. They all had their scissors. We hand cut down in the 5 minutes before going live with this all of those jellies. It was horrifying. Jellies is art. So this is funereal jelly at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, apparently where you do design and the human body. Between design and the human body, there is jelly, gelatinous desserts. And also eventually finally worked out how to make really big jellies as well, which was a real sort of turnaround. And this is sort of a wonderful project. It was, and for me, it's like really the power of if there's a good idea, there's always a way to make it happen. So with this SS Great Britain, they had 10 different artists, and any museum in the UK could bid for those different artists to come do something. Now, most of the artists quite sensibly said, oh, we'll just come do a talk. And we'll say, and weirdly, the museum got to dictate what the artists did. And we said, look, we'll do anything you like. We're up for it all. Bring us along. Like, we really want to give it a go. And so I think the other artists, who people like Martin Parr, Jake and Dinos Chapman, who are good, they had 3 or 4 bids. We had 40. And it was everything from making a nuclear reactive bit of artwork to just a party around a bonfire in the Outer Hebrides, but Bristol won, and they said SS Great Britain, which is the first ironclad steam-propelled ship, they said, float our boat on a sea of jelly. And we said, yeah, that's fine, we'll do it. We don't think they'd win. They've got 40 other bids. They're probably not going to get through. And they did win. And it was terrifically awkward because we sat down with the commissioners, the Arts Council, and the guys from the SS Great Britain. We said, oh, this is like lovely idea, really fun, like, it's great, good that you're thinking of us. What's the budget? And the Arts Council said, yes, you've got £500 to do this, which was a little bit worrying. And I sort of asked the guys from the SS Great Britain why they put this forward. And they said, well, to be honest with you, we're in the pub. We never thought it'd win. And we're as surprised as you are. But we were both agreed that we thought it was such a fun thing to do. Let's make it happen by hook or by crook. And at the time, I had in my lockup a few tons. I had basically at one point we commissioned the entire world's supply of methyl cellulose to make a chocolate waterfall. So I had a lot of methyl cellulose remaining, like literally tons of it. And I said, look, I'll give you all the gelling agent. You just need to give me the labor. And they said, that's fine. We turned up, and they had all of the Bristol ex-cons, the community payback team, who are doing their working out their sentences by helping us make the world's biggest jelly, including one guy who was called a hammer with a scar across his face as he killed someone with a hammer. But it turns out he's good at jelly too. But with all these adventures, what I've really sort of come to discover is just how wondrous the sensory apparatus is that every single one of us has, except, of course, for my business partner's wife, because she has a rare condition called anosmia, which means she can't smell at all, which made her really, really nervous when first cooking on first dates. But by and large, everyone's got a really good sense of taste and smell, and we don't really understand it that well as we could do. And really started discovering this when I met this guy, Dr. Ben Seymour, and he's a neuroimager and neuroscientist, and he specializes, he spent his career specializing in pain learning for infants, which I think eventually got him down. And he just wanted to do something about pleasure, something a bit more positive than working out how the human brain works under pain in people that can't speak because they're too young. So he got in contact with us, and we started talking about the pleasures of the senses and how taste and smell work, and how they're relatively little understood. And you can really tell this when you look at the Nobel Prizes that have been awarded. So the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded in 1967 for discoveries illuminating vision, 1961 for the inner ear, but it wasn't until 2004 that you had a similar prize for olfaction. And this is because as humans, we tend to, 80% of your memory is visually based. We really, really rely on primarily visual input and then secondarily auditory inputs in order to navigate the world and communicate. And so for us, this is something that's really important because our main project at the moment is working on the foundation of a new cultural institution about food and drink, which we started off with an exhibition this year about ice cream, which had 23,000 people along to it, which is great fun. But anyway, so for me, I just want to celebrate in this talk some of the wonders that you all have before you can go on to create great things with them. So the first is with your nostrils. So you try and steal back the primacy of smell and taste just by telling you just how wonderful they are. So for me, the nostrils really important. They're hardwired into your brain. Everyone knows this. So they go straight into the amygdala, bypassing the higher cortical regions of the brain. And that's pretty cool because you smell 23,000, a bit more than 23,000 times every single day. But a lot of that you don't register. So one of the things that's really important is if you're eating, you want to pay attention to something that you're smelling, you have to smell your food. Give it a really good sniff, really try and inhale, and then breathe out as well, because retronasal activity will pick up all sorts of different flavors too. And if you don't do that, only about 5 to 10% of all those sort of odoriferous elements will hit your olfactory epithelium. I have an awful lot, in my day-to-day life, I do a lot of experiments, but I have an awful lot of meetings as well, and quite often I get really bored in those meetings. I, do you have the same thing? Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that has made meetings for me so much better is finding out that, I met Sisal Tollas, she's one of the world's top nosers, and she said, look, when you shake hands with someone, within 20 minutes of you shaking hands, they will probably smell their hand. They'll probably sniff their fingers just to see what you're like. And it's Bush doing it. And I kind of thought she was pulling my leg. So went back to New Scientist again, and apparently it's true. So watch out. When you have your next meeting and you're drifting off, just look for those people. And it always happens. It's totally inadvertent. They look like they're tussling their hair or picking up a pen or chewing a pen, but they're having a little sniff as well. The other thing as well that I really like, I should probably stop this somehow. There's enough finger sniffing. The other thing that I love as well is that you actually smell differently from each nostril. So in a little bit when we're going to taste something, give it a smell from one nostril than the other. It will smell totally, totally different. And what's more, your lead nostril changes every 3 hours. So you might have been in bed with a bit of a cold, it's on one side of your face, and then suddenly it all shifts at that moment. And that is the moment that your lead nostril is changing over. And we do that to keep our palate refreshed so that we can. But sadly, even with all of this, visual input is still the king. So you process visual input about 10 times faster than olfactory. And there's a wonderful study in 2001 by the University of California, actually University of Bordeaux. And they gave a load of wine students, and people who should really know about this, red wine and white wine, asked them to smell them and describe them. They basically used red and white wine descriptors for each. This is like the best experiment to be part of, it's great. They then took the wines back and gave them a white wine and a red wine, but this time they were both the same wine, but there was red colouring in one of the white wines. So it looked like a red and white, but they're actually both white wine. And every single one of those students who really should know what they're talking about used red wine descriptors for that white wine, because visual cues really do trump olfactory ones. And sort of taste, I guess, is even more problematic because it's way less nuance. And move on to the tongue and why I think that's marvelous too. But the thing about taste is despite what people might tell you, you can eat and enjoy almost anything. And Shackleton, the British explorer, described it thus. He said, I think the palate of the human animal can adjust itself to almost anything. And they're scientists, a bit like my friend Dr. Ben Seymour, who've done lots of experiments to try this out. So Paul Rosen at the University of Pennsylvania worked out that until children are 2, and you might have had different experiences with your kids, but until children are 2, theoretically, they will try almost anything. And this is what he gave them. So fish eggs, 60% of them will eat. Dish soap, 79%, even more popular. Biscuits topped with ketchup, 94%. Ketchup's pretty good. Dead, sterilized grasshoppers, 30%. And then, kind of the worst, he coiled up peanut butter and scented it with Limburger cheese to make it resemble dog shit. And 55% of people would eat that. So it's kind of interesting. This is when people are pre-socialized, really. The lowest ranked item, though, was with only 15%, was human hair. And if people eat almost anything, the thing I like is they can also grow to like almost anything that they'll eat as well. So in wartime, there's a college in America, and at the start they presented them with evaporated milk. They said, do you like it? Will you eat it in preference, drink it in preference to normal milk? Only 40% of people liked it. After they gave it to the students 16 times over the next month, at the end, most of them preferred it to normal milk, which is, I think, remarkable. But that said, your mouth is still an incredible instrument as well. So although the human stomach can cope with all sorts of things, it is rather exacting as well. So you can detect something that is only 10 microns across with your teeth. So to put that in context, if you shrank a Coca-Cola bottle down to the size of a human hair, then the O on the Coca-Cola would be the thing that you can detect with your teeth. So it's really, really tiny. And also, I do a lot of work with lots of sort of manufacturing brands, and they, it's fascinating. Like, I do a lot of work with Guinness. We redesigned the Guinness Storehouse taste experience, and every single Guinness that goes out is not just tested by machine, but tasted by humans as well. And the same is true with many food manufacturers, because the human palate is far, far better at picking up errors than any machine that's invented yet. So I think you'll contain mysterious wonders within your sensory apparatus. So now I'm going to get into sort of new culinary creativity. What's hot, what's not, and how can together we make the future? So what I'm going to do is look at some food trends, like what people are into now globally. This is very much at the consumer end, and also what people were into sort of like last year that now looks really sad. You wouldn't ever want to do that. We're going to analyze that and look at how we can step into the future together. So hot and not. Vegan curious. I run a catering company. It's like everything's changed. At the start of this year, normally when you're doing a catering job, you'll allow for 25 to 35% of people not telling you exactly what they want to eat with all their dietary requirements. So that people come, they're like, oh, I didn't know, and they change what they're eating. It's a complete nightmare. Now this year, it's moved up to 50%, which meant that in January, which in the UK people do something called veganuary, we're just ambushed by it. And we're doing these 12-course meals where there are a lot of people who are getting stuff from the supermarket for their 12 courses because they hadn't told us what they're going to eat beforehand. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of grown-up dining as well, which is really nice. We've been treated as adults. A lot of low-alcohol drinks. So for me, this is your non-alcoholic drinks. So like in the UK, 30% of people under 25 don't drink at all, which is quite strange for my business, because my business used to be all booze, fags, and parties, and now it's all about wellness. And then some of the stuff that we now look at as being quite dated. We all know kind of about the dark side of avocados, how bad for the environment they are. In the UK, obviously, we're struggling a little bit with legislation. The one thing Theresa May's got through unanimously, and her really successful policy implementation for the last year, is banning plastic straws. So we're focusing on all the important stuff. But there's less of the sort of little plates, not pretending to forage so much. Thankfully, all the rainbow food is dying out because it's just really stupid. But you look at those sort of commonalities for them, the things that we're into now, more healthful, more adult. Actually, it should say conscientious. I got that on the wrong side when I was doing it on the train. And things we're not interested in are sort of more indulgent, probably style over substance, and quite individually focused as well. But the thing is, when you start looking at this, actually, if you add a time component, these are all things we're into last year. Perhaps next year, in 2019, all of this is going to start looking quite dated as well. And so if this is Everett Rogers' bell curve of how trends travel, and you can see over this side, they start with the innovators and adopters, and they go into the sort of laggards. They start looking rather less interesting. So I was going to sort of explore what we do in terms of like making new food, and with that, through plasma, a possible future food. And this really comes about because, so does everyone know what plasma is? No, okay. So you've got three normal states of matter: solid, liquid, gas. There's a mysterious fourth state of matter, plasma. And I've got to read this bit. Plasma occurs when gas atoms, stripped of a few electrons by the application of strong electric fields, become highly excited and display vivid colors. So what that actually means, and the temperature of it can be like huge. It can be 100 degrees Celsius up to millions of degrees Celsius. And you'll notice plasmas because they're lasers, they're stars, they're our sun. And Wired basically asked us to come up with, send a postcard back from the future, how we'd be eating food in the future. And I didn't want to do something about eating insects, like, ethnophagia. It seems so much of it. I wanted to do something that would be a fun project to do. So I said, look, let's talk about lightning. Lightning's totally sustainable. It's like free energy in the atmosphere. Maybe in the future, in 20 years in the future, we'll be able to harness all that energy and cook with plasma. So I talked about lightning, and they said, that's great, let's go to a studio, we'll just mock it up in a studio. I said, no, 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 we've got to do it for real. Not only because I knew, a friend of mine's actually been struck by lightning, we knew what it could do to human, this isn't them, knows what lightning can do to human flesh. It looks amazing if you survive. But there are actually 3 different lightning labs in the UK, because on average, every single plane gets hit once a year by lightning. And with the carbon fiber hulls they have at the moment, that lightning can punch a hole in the future. When they had metal fuselage, it didn't matter at all. Carbon fiber, it can decompress the plane, so which is can be yeah, it's not great. So they have 3 labs, and I phoned them all up. I said, look, what we really want to do is do some cooking with lightning. Are you up for it? 2 of the labs didn't get back. One of them did, which was exciting. So we went down to Tony Davies' high voltage lab, and then we looked around. It's quite exciting. They had lots of sort of airplane parts and Ministry of Defence, fighter plane things, and then we put a bit of steak in it, and we zapped it with 200,000 volts. So it's arc lightning, and it's about. That actually gets up to about 50,000 degrees as it's traveling, because plasma heats through its resistance to the air. So in a bolt of lightning, when you touch it, it'd be about 50,000 degrees, which is 5 times hotter than the sun. So it looks amazing. That was the first shot in camera, no Photoshop or anything. And you can actually see the tendrils kind of arcing along like all the veins. And it was just really cool. The only problem is it didn't really do anything because the burst of energy was just so short, it couldn't get enough energy into the meat. So we then hooked it up to 3-phase power, that's an Arga cooker, cooked our meat, and we came prepared as well. We had some béarnaise sauce, we tucked into it, we're like, oh my God, this is steak cooked by lightning. Is it going to be as a steak cooked by lava? Turns out it's absolutely disgusting. It tasted sort of metallic, it's tangy. It's not something you want to describe your meat as. But then I found out there was a chap called Dr. Andrew Wright from Glynwind, Welsh University, I can't pronounce it, Glynwind University of Advanced Materials, and he had made this thing, where is it? Which is a plasma cooker, a plasma oven, that he took a normal microwave, it's fucking dangerous, took a normal microwave and created plasma in it, and there's risk that it can leak with all the radiation because he just cooked a hole on the side. And here's my business partner, Harry, hopefully cooking with it.
So this has been adapted from a normal microwave to allow it to cook with plasma. So inside is a glass tube that we can put under very low pressure, and then we pump the power through it to create plasma, which will cook anything in seconds. But we're going to see if we can cook bacon with it. Into the tube. This could be the first time that bacon's been cooked with plasma. Tastes like the future.
So, might taste like the future, it doesn't taste very good. At that point we said, let's go back to the drawing board and let's think of something that people are going to be excited about, even if it doesn't taste amazing. And the answer to that was alcohol. So we then went to our lightning lab and we zapped a load of zapped a load of vodka, and that tastes pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. So I've brought some of that with me, and here we go. This is one really good. You can see it's lightning vodka. It says lightning vodka. I'll bring this down here. If you can pass that up the back and then back round. There's some over here as well. Fuck, am I going to blow the speakers? There you go. And the procedure with this is, if you have a sip of it and you swish it back and forth, a bit like mouthwash, some people will love this, Some people think it's the most offensive thing they've ever been given. It tastes like you're licking a battery right the way across your palate as well, so your whole mouth goes numb. I once brought it to a lecture before. This was a panel discussion, and I gave it to the other panelists beforehand, which was great because they really couldn't handle anything on the panel. I was just able to do all the hosting, get on with it, as they coped with what was going on with their mouth. But so swish it back and forth, then swallow it, and see what you think. Some people, it's very polarizing, but like lightning. But I think what all this brings me to is, if you look at all of those trends, what's hot, what's not before, this sort of approach we take to food, you can pull out some meta trends in food, which if you can do, you can make the future as well. Because to be honest with you, if something's a trend already, you don't want to do it because it's just going to look derivative. You need to do something completely different for it to be. So for me, it's like, it's got to look really good now. And all of those things we saw before do look good. Everything's so driven by Instagram. It's the curse and also the blessing of food. And I think it's one of the reasons why food's been so strong the evolution of food has been so impressive globally. It's helpful if there's a strong narrative, and there's a sort of sense of scarcity. So it could be obscurity, it's very expensive, also it's taboo, or there's a lot of effort required. And then hopefully it genuinely tastes good as well. If you can make it genuinely taste good, then it'll do it. So you can see how all of these kind of really fit into that. And we do lots of like future trend forecasting. If you want, we do an annual food report. You can download it from our website. But some of the stuff that we're excited about now are things like we're working with Google DeepMind on AI dining, which is not like finding out your recipes. It's rather so that, that game where you play Who's Your Ultimate Dinner Party Guests? You can sit down with whoever it is you would like to be. We'll create an AI of that person act. We'll have its earbud in. Pulling apart some African cuisine. So I'm quite excited about bitters at the moment. Dining for sleep, we're holding a whole festival of sleep and dining, and mixed reality dining as well. So on cruise ships, people are there day in, day out. How can you revitalize their fabulous food experience through using a lot of mixed media with the food? And I just thought I'd have a final thought as well with all of this. If you just, one more thing. For us, our real approach to food is food as entertainment. And this is really because we're lucky enough where we're living, the cultural group that we're in, that we're probably not eating because we need the calories. We're probably actually have too many calories. But it's actually something that's a leisure activity when you could be doing anything else. I thought to look at this and study this up, focus on one thing, the humble gherkin. So with the gherkin, we discovered that a small gherkin can actually draw about 300 to 500 watts of power and can be turned into a rather rubbish light bulb. So I think this video will tell you about it even better than I can.
The modest gherkin, compelling in your salt beef bagel, meat platter, or fondue, also harbors potential for death and wonder. As a conductor of electricity, it emits a sodium glow. This is due to their vinegar content, which contains acetic acid and sodium chloride. Gherkins are best because of their high water content and translucence, the ultimate food-based bulbs. It's important to wire them in parallel so as not to decrease the voltage. The electricity excites the sodium ions in the salt. Falling back to ground state, they emit light at a frequency called sodium D-line, the same light you see in the sodium lamps in parking lots. But lighting pickle bulbs requires enormous power. A small gherkin draws 300 watts, the equivalent of 12 25-watt light bulbs. A large gherkin draws 500 watts, the equivalent of 10 50-watt bulbs, 50 table fans, or 500 clock radios. So 60 pickles wired together uses enough power to illuminate a city block. The chandelier draws the equivalent of 2 electric chairs. This much power in the pickle comes with severe danger. Utmost precautions must be taken. The humble gherkin, nature's finest fruit bulb, wired in parallel to evoke a sense of wonder. the gherkin chandelier, magnificence in the mundane.
So, we've brought our own mini gherkin chandelier here. Which doesn't quite draw that much power, but hopefully is going to work and not blow all the power out everywhere. But if we could drop the lights at the front here, is that possible? Thank you. Brilliant. And then what I'm going to ask everyone to do is for a rip-roaring grand finale, count down from 3, and we'll turn on our mini gherkinator. Are you ready? Okay, come on. Are you ready? Okay, perfect. We'll count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. So yeah, not very good as light bulbs, but even the humble pickle can be wonderful. So thank you very, very much, and yeah, have a brilliant rest of the festival.